This is my bow template. As you can see here, when I create a template, I crop my image that I want, that area that I'm making a transfer of, and I repeat it several times on the page. Here's another, and then I put that under parchment paper and I create my royal icing transfers. And so here are the Lalaloopsy bows, and I've made them in white so that I could just crank out the batch, and I'm going to airbrush the bows. I can put these away for when I get an order, because when you make something like this, you know, chances are as soon as you post it, you'll get more orders. And while you're doing, 10 bows, it really doesn't take much more time to make 20. And then you can put them away in a cupcake liner. And then when you get your job, you can either paint them with luster dust or airbrush them, and then you can get them the color you want and place them on your cookie. So these turned out really well. As you can see, the bump is really defined, and so when I've kind of decided my color scheme, I'll airbrush these. When working on character cookies and replicating a design, I suggest that you Google and use a coloring page, and then you see this here is the same Lalaloopsy doll. Somebody went to the trouble of creating a coloring page, and this is much easier to follow than this. You can use this as your color guide, but this is much better for outlining. And so obviously for a copy cake, you print it to size and you use it in your copy cake. But if you are not equipped with a copy cake, the thing to do is to use this. You see, I've created the template to cut my dough, so I'm a little bit off of the edge. But when you're using it, then after when you're done cutting your dough, and you're using it as your actual template to follow for the design, then you cut right on the line. Follow the edge as best you can, and then you're going to have the exact shape of the outline of the cookie. And then once you've cut it all out, then you place it on your cookie, and with an edible marker trace it out. And then when you're done tracing the outside, you can go further and trace the areas that you think you're going to have trouble eyeballing, such as the face. But in the case of this Lalaloopsy, you will need to base coat your skin color before you can outline the eyes or the mouth. And usually, especially Lalaloopsy, is pretty loose with regards to the outline. It's pretty simple. Once you get the outside lines, usually it's a pretty good gauge, and if you keep the drawing next to you as you work, you'll pretty much be set to know where you should be piping. So you place that, down, and then if you want it, after you've traced it, then you have all your cookies, then you can cut further, and let's say cut here, cut the hair off, and then you could take this and use this as that line for the bangs, and then cut maybe the bottom of the dress, and then you'd know exactly what line to follow for this. So then you could trace this and go through them all and use it as your template, and every time you cut a little bit of it, then you have another line to trace. Just like here, the hair, you could cut this row after you've traced the first run, and then you could cut this and place it on your other lines, and you'll have this to follow and create more of the lines to have a guide to follow then to do your icing. Now I've outlined my Lalaloopsies in white, and I'm going to flood it with, I'm going to pretty much follow the colors of the original doll here. I'm not going to get too creative, it's just to show you the principle of the design. And so here's a completed one, and you can see all the dimension on the hair, which will create, you know, a much nicer finished product, and the bow turned out very well. And so here we can see the sections that will be filled, and we're going to be alternating those. I have my little bow ready. I'm going to be using a white bow. And I have a toothpick ready, and we're going to start. I'm going to adjust my light here for you guys not to get blocked. Alright, so I'm going to start with, let's say here, this little area. My icing is probably a smidgen thicker than I would normally have it, but because I really want that hair to pop, to have a big bump, I've got to have it thicker, or else it'll just flop, you know, it won't stand up. I'm going to remove my cookie sheet and work right on my counter here so I can bang it, because it's not healing the way that I want with the toothpick. Now this nitpicking that I'm doing on this cookie is not going to make for a fast order, but it will make for a very nice cookie. So you can start with the first layer of it, and then you move it around to get it to go in all the crevices. You can drag your toothpick in it to make sure that it's all, you know, that it's sunken in, and you won't have any of those craters. And then you can come in and pile on another layer of it for the dimension aspect. And there we go. And then I can bang it. Really, I think my icing is a little bit too thick, but we're going to make do. I don't feel like taking it out of the bag and adding water to it. Like I've said before, I'm lazy. Alright, so now I'm going to look at my little drawing here. I'm going to have that so I can kind of watch it. And I'm going to do this part here. So, if you're not sure about how to do the quilting, just watch my other video and you'll understand the principle of it and how to achieve sections in the same color. Alright, so now bang it to get out my things, and now I'm going to look. The bow is smaller at the top. I used a royal icing transfer to make it, so got a little pink on it there. So about like that. And I've dropped it in before filling in my other sections, because once this section crusts and I drop my bow in, if I'm waiting, I will likely get cracks that'll pop, you know, that'll come from out of under the bow. And I don't want any cracks, so I'm going to ice around, flood around that bow when I do my other sections. For example, like right here, I'm going to work around the bow, and I'm squirting. It's even getting under there. The bow is key. It's an important decorating element in this particular cookie, so we want it to look nice and not flat. So take some time to make your bows nice, because it's a step that you can do in advance. And like I always say with the royal icing transfers, you can throw away the duds, which is good, because royal icing transfers, the cost is really not so bad compared to throwing away cookies that you don't find are nicely decorated. And so, you know, sometimes you think it's longer to squirt out your icing and adjust the consistency. But in the end, because you're fiddling with it so much, probably takes just as much time wasted, but I'm standing by my decision. I'm not going to do it. I'm working in a 2-tip. I can be a lot more, you know, fussy with my cookie because this is a demo. I'm making 4 of them, which obviously will take little time. If you had an order of these, you'd have to be a little bit more tolerant to imperfections. I can let it go once I've got 100 on my trays. I say, okay, never mind being perfect, let's just get them done. Not that they're not nice, but I'm maybe not as crazy about every little detail. Alright, now over here is not touching, so we'll do this section. And the other thing that happens when you're working in such a thick icing, it crusts very quickly. And so you don't have a long wait between the sections. Normally I would not be working in so many colors, but I wanted to show her in a lot of color variations. So I've actually I've got a blonde. This is fuchsia. I'm going to do a blue-haired one, and the other one is kind of like a red orangish hair color. Alright, so I'm going to come in here. This has probably crusted enough. This is probably my favorite of the doll's hairstyle. Reminds me of the old style doll, maybe like Shirley Temple type thing, you know? Alright, so here, it's been a while since this was done. So the next thing that you have to factor in is the skirt that will not be cookie when you're making the dress area. So never mind what you see, the colors you see on the internet with regards to these dolls. You've got to do your color palette with what you have. So I'm making my skirts out of crepe paper. I found white, blue, pink, and red crepe paper. So I've got to work with that. I'm going to make my dresses in accordance to those colors. If you're a sewer, you could maybe make your dresses out of fabric. You could maybe like put an elastic in the waist and then you could just pop them on. This icing's fairly runny. It's healing pretty well. What I'm going to do here, I have some white. That's what I have on hand, no big, and I'm going to do some little dots just to make a pattern on her dress. After, I'll be adding other elements once this is dry, like buttons or ruffles or something. I don't know yet what, but you have to do this now for it to create the the print effect on the fabric. There we go. And so that will dry, and then I can accent it in white if I wanted. I think her skin color might be a little faint. I should have added a little bit more copper, but so here they are, and I just wanted to show you the mistake that I made just for your information. So here if you look at her hair, there's like it kind of melted together the sections of the hair. And for this particular design, I personally find for it to look nice, it's nicer if it's very separate like this. And so my icing was a little bit too runny, as opposed to this one that you saw me working on before. I was complaining the icing was a bit thick. I think I'd go thicker than thinner, and then maybe it's because I rushed through trying to get it done since I didn't have a big order. When you have a big order, you know, you go through the sections and you come back and it's had time to crust. But when you're looking over one cookie, the patience isn't there. And you can see also here the dresses for each doll is slightly different. Like I said before, I'm coordinating with some crepe paper, and so I have red, blue, pink, and white crepe paper. So this one here will have a white skirt. This one, I don't know, maybe this one will have a pink, and this one will have a blue, alternate a bit, and this will be red. And you can see all the bows here. And once it's all put together, it'll be very colorful. So obviously these faces are going to be needing eyes and a mouth. And so if you want to be really meticulous, you can use the cardstock template and cut with an X-Acto the shape. The mouth I would do with an edible pen. I wouldn't ice on because of the size of this cookie. And if you look at an actual doll, it's very flat. It doesn't have that bump. So I think a marker will be fine. And so for the eyes, perhaps an edible marker for that little lash area, and then royal icing for the actual button. There's a lot of things that I'll kind of eyeball on a cookie, but one of the things that I do not kind of just do whatever is when I'm replicating a character, the eyes are crucial to actually realizing, like, creating the authentic look. So here I've cut out the eyes and the mouth. Here, can you see the mouth? I've just cut out, and I'm going to do a dotted line like the stitching. So I'm placing this. Now my dress is wet, so I have to be careful. I should wait, but I'm very impatient. So there we go. So my face underneath is dry, so I can touch it. And I'm just going to mark my eyes. So this is black because I'm going to be working in black after. I can touch up the lashes after. So the mouth here, go slow and just little dashes like you're sewing, and you have that guide to follow her smile, and there she is. And so now make sure you don't have any ink on your hands when you go back to the cookie. And now here for this area, I'm going to just color this in. And then after I'll pipe the eyes. But this I want it to lay flat. The lashes. Oops, I'm out of frame. So there, I've just drawn those in, and then I'll be able to pipe. So let's do that again. So here we go. Here's her face. I'm placing this. This one's a little bit fresher, the hair. I didn't wait for this to dry overnight. So place it. I'm having trouble because of this lollipop stick. There we go. So now I'm placing myself accordingly, and I'm doing the smile. And I have that stencil to follow, so I know exactly where to stop. Now my eyes, you can mark quickly. If your cookie's wet, be careful not to damage any of the areas. And there we go. Try to lift off straight so that you don't smear your marker. And now you can go back to this little area here, which is the lash for the doll, and just color it in. And same thing on this side. And then you'll be able to ice with royal icing the actual eye. So this is my first time creating this particular design, so I'm learning with you. I'm going to see about coloring this whole eye in black because I want the button to have that edge, you know, and then there's a cross, like the stitching to hold the button eye on. So if I pipe and then pipe again, it won't really work well. So I'm going to try here and just color this in, and then I'm going to outline it in royal icing and then create my X in the middle for the eye, and I bet you this will be sufficient for the, it already looks cute like that, so we're going to do the eyes with edible marker. Alright, I'm going to start by piping an outline around that circle, and so I would start from this point, so that where you start piping and then it meets, so that if, you know, there's a little bump or blob or whatever, it's kind of hidden in that lash. So this should be relatively easy because you're following the line from the circle that you drew. So very slowly, don't rush this step. And then it meets, and if there's a little bit of a peak, you can just with your toothpick like that, and then move it so that you're always at the good angle. And then here at the lash, pipe your circle around, follow the line. So I'm working in a 2-tip here to create more of a bump for the realism of the button. I think I'm going to switch it up to a 1 for the actual stitch. I have a bit of paper here just to show you what I'm going to do because it's going to be hard to see on the actual button. And so it's stitched the eye, dot, pull, and it's just a cross, you see, like that. And so try to do a bit of a dot before you pull, and then dot, dot, pull, dot. This is a bit big, I think, to fit inside my button, but there we go. So you can gauge yourself more. There we go. That really makes the look, like completes the eye. There we go. I don't know if I can zoom in and you can even see that. I think you can see it. There you go. See her face? It turned out pretty good. I like her little dress. Wait till you see when she's in her complete outfit. It really is going to look cute. So the cookies, I made them like cookie pops, and I stopped at the torso, here the waist, and I made little notches when I did my template so that when I would put the skirt on, I'd have something for it to catch on. So here I purchased some inexpensive tulle, and I gathered it, and then I put a little ribbon, and there you go. She's wearing a dress. Little girl can hold her hands a little bit under the skirt, and it really gives it a 3D kind of effect without it obviously being 3D, and it brings it to life. The fabric gives it movement, and I think any little girl would be thrilled to run around at a party holding this. And the other one, here a different color variation again. You know, I gathered a pink tulle. The more you gather it, the more the color shows. If you don't use a lot of it, the color kind of doesn't pop. See? Very cute. For the doll to stand well, I found these really cool bags. They have a good base here, some cardstock, and so when it opens, it's going to lay flat and it's going to be strong, and the whole thing won't topple over. And so I'm going to fill it with my jelly beans, using jelly beans because they're kind of the heaviest candies that I can think of. Because the cookie's kind of big, I made the cookie big because the Lalaloopsy dolls have a big head. And so you're just filling it up. The jelly beans. Also, jelly beans are more kind of tolerant, don't get stale as quickly as gummies and things like that. The bag's maybe not going to be completely airtight. And so here I can gather up the bag, and I'm going to tape it closed. for it to, I'm going to use, so here, a good length of tape to seal it. I'm just putting the stick for it to leave me that spot. So obviously I could have filled it with more candy, but the more candy I put in, the longer her skirt needs to be, and the more it costs for each doll, right? So you decide how generous you want to be with the candy. So once that's in, then you can fold the upper part of the bag. I would suggest you do this instead of cutting it, because you see now this gives kind of the shape of the skirt, and it will give something for the crepe paper to rest on and give it the correct skirt shape. You see? It's kind of angled. And so now my doll, the stick's a bit long, so I'm going to cut it again. And then I can easily just drop that in. The length maybe could use just a smidgen off again. Here we go. And because of that flat base, it's really pretty sturdy, and I don't have that many jelly beans in there, and it's holding up very well. And now I'll be able to gather up some crepe paper and put on her skirt. Here's another idea for the same cookie. So the body, finishing at the waist with the little edge here for the ribbon to catch on. I filled up this bag with jelly beans. I'm using jelly beans because they're heavy. And so I stood it up, cut the stick to size, and now I'll be able to gather here at the waist some crepe paper. And I use crepe paper because it's a little sturdier than tissue paper, and it gathers nicely. And so this is what I'm going to put here at her waist and gather all around. And it's going to hide the jelly beans and create a skirt. And then I would bag the whole thing. If you wanted to bag it again, I would bag the whole thing, because if you bag just the cookie first, because of the way her arms are and everything, it won't work. So maybe you could get like a 6-inch, you know, the really thin cake boards, and then bag it up with a bow on top.